All right. Welcome, everyone. I want to thank you for being here and welcome to Age Bias on the Ballot. 100 days. Someone reminded me yesterday that there are less than 100 days until the midterm elections, and candidates everywhere are asking for our vote. And this event came about when I was listening to debates and candidate forums leading up to Colorado's primaries, which occurred exactly a month ago on June 30th. And not in one candidate forum or debate did I hear candidates talk about an issue that I hear about from people every single day, certainly from many of you on this call: workplace age discrimination. In fact, the number of ageist remarks that were made in the course of those forums and debate was pretty astounding to me. So I reached out to some friends and colleagues and said, hey, would you join me in an event where we could talk about it and put this issue in front of people who are running for office and in front of our elected officials? And I'm very grateful that so many of you said yes. Among the people who are co-hosting are the Age Equity Alliance, Art Against Ageism, my friend Jeanette Liardi, who wrote the book Aging Sideways, my company Encore Roadmap, Grey Panthers of New York City, Karen Brown's iAging, Maureen Wiley Clough's It Gets Late Early, Old School Hub for Ageism Awareness, SecondActWomen, and the Encore Network. So very grateful to all of you. And today we're going to hear some experts on the issue of workplace age discrimination and how to get attention for it and how to champion the kind of public policies that we need to be championing. I do want everyone to consider this a beginning and not an endpoint. And after the session, we'll be sharing not only the recording, but a transcript of it and also resources that can help you move this work forward. There are two things that we are not going to be talking about today, even though some of you raised questions about it. One is, how do I polish my resume? How do I get it past AI algorithms? I've asked my friend Kate Bond, who's an executive and career coach, to do a session on that, and she will be with us on August 12th, so mark your calendar. We also had a number of questions asking, is this particular thing that happened to me workplace age discrimination? And I have asked attorney Gary Phelan to join us on August 26th, and he'll be answering all your questions about that. Today is exclusively about how do we get candidates' attention on this issue? How do we get commitments to actually make a real difference? So with that, we're going to go ahead and get started. Make sure that you keep yourself on mute. Put any questions or resources that you have in the chat. We'll try to get to some at the end of this session. And whatever we don't, I promise you, we will respond to in a follow-up email. So in a follow-up email, you'll be receiving a recording, a folder full of resources that our speakers are generously sharing, as well as responses to questions that we don't get to. So with that, we are going to get started with chatting with my friend, Maureen Wiley Clough, who has an amazing story about workplace age discrimination and how early it begins. Maureen is, and the reason we wanted to start with the story is I know whenever I've talked to policymakers and tried to influence, people they listen to the data, but they really want the story, right? And Maureen's got a compelling story. So Maureen, why don't we start with you telling us what led to the founding of It Gets Late Early?
Thanks for having me, Janine. I'm really excited to be here and glad you've amassed such a core, cool group of people who are really making huge changes out there in this arena. We need a lot more awareness, so thank you. So I started It Gets Late Early because I was made very aware of the aspect of ageism in the workplace and how deep it runs. I was called a dinosaur when I was 37 at my job. It was a tech company. My friend was making a joke, but I actually realized, heard it, I was like, oh my gosh, he's actually kind of not wrong. I looked around and I was like, wow, I am at 37 years old, one of the oldest people who's not a senior director, VP, C-suite, et cetera. And I was like, how can that be? There are only so many rungs on the ladder. And then I started thinking about it and I was like, wait a second, I've worked at market leading companies across industries. I worked in TV, I've worked at Bloomberg, I've worked at Concur, these big leaders. And I realized that the through line was there throughout across industries. It's like, man, this is an issue. And in an era where people were actually talking about inclusion and diversity and all of that in the workplace, I was like, why is no one talking about the literal one thing that we all share? It's like come on, man, this is just such an obvious thing to add to the discussion. So I found out that I was far from the only person who was worried about it. And I just thought it was sheer lunacy that it wasn't being discussed. And I was like, how do I bring this to, I would say market, but how do I bring this up in such a way that will capture attention and whatnot? And I thought podcast is a great way to just get started with having a conversation and bringing people's stories to light. So that's exactly what I did. And that was 3-ish years ago at this point, and it's been incredible.
So Maureen, you've heard so many people's stories, and I know you've really dived deeply in the issue. You've spoken to groups like AARP. What have you learned about the prevalence of workplace age discrimination since? Because I think what's so stunning to me about it is it seems rampant, and yet somehow there are all these conversations going on about what we should do to make things better, and it always seems absent from policy discussions. Tell me what you've found out.
You are absolutely right. It is incredibly rampant. It is stunning. AARP does a absolute heap of research on this, and they found that 64% of people believe that they've been victims of workplace discrimination, age discrimination, and 90% of people believe that it's real. It is very real. In fact, there are more cases being filed with the EEOC every year. That's on the upswing. So there is, I believe, a general growing awareness of this issue, which is a really good thing because that's the first way we can get towards change, right? But it is the hardest form of discrimination to prove. I know you're going to have Gary Phelan on the show soon, or on this forum soon, and he is an employment attorney who I actually got to meet in person in New York recently, and he will tell you all about why it is such the case that you cannot often get a settlement or a favorable outcome in the courts based on how the laws are written and how the Supreme Court ruled in 2009. But it is extremely rampant. It's the hardest type of discrimination case to prove. And frankly, ageism is so societally acceptable at this point, people don't even know it's wrong. So the World Health Organization says that 1 in 2 of us are ageist, and I think half those people are lying because I think we're all ageist because we've been fed these messages throughout our entire lives. My own kids will literally look at me and be like, hey, Mom, you're old. It's like this burn, right? That's what they do. And I didn't teach them that. They're getting this from somewhere else. So it's everywhere, and I'm grateful to see people starting to understand that it's wrong. But the very people we need to know it's wrong most of all when it comes to this, not just policymakers, but also employers. And just yesterday, a CEO was quoted, or 2 days ago, the CEO of Lattice, which is an HR tech company, was quoted in the Wall Street Journal saying that she wanted to have people who were early to the workforce, early in their career, because they did not have, quote, calcified thoughts. So there you go. It's a big issue. That's an HR tech company leader saying that. The stereotypes are alive and well. They are embedded and entrenched in these organizations, and they come from the top. So we have a lot of work to do.
And we do have a lot of work to do. So one of the things, and here's how I would love for you to wrap up, Maureen. When I've talked to policymakers, when we've tried to advance legislation, they always want to get to things quickly.
Yes.
Here's your challenge. Wrap your story with the statistics in 1 minute, because I want to give people an idea about how you can quickly meld a story with a stat when you are trying to get someone's attention.
I'll just say this. I think every politician under the sun knows that they need to appeal to a broad audience in order to get elected. That is the one issue on the ballot that will, or maybe one of several issues on the ballot that would literally impact everyone, if not now, later, and if not them personally now, someone that they know and love in their community. They also have to appeal to corporate. And guess what? Repeated research that said that $850 billion, like the GDP of Pennsylvania, is lost every single year thanks to ageism and from disqualifying people of all generations from the workforce. So I would say if you want to get people behind you, this is a really good way to do it, both on the personal front as well as on the corporate front, which we know is so crucial for candidates.
Beautifully done, Maureen. Thank you so much. And because you queued up the employer, I'm next going to bring up Jennifer Butz, who is representing the Encore network here. And she's going to go into a little bit more deeply why it makes a difference to employers, communities, and the overall economy when we ignore workplace age discrimination. Jennifer has also put together some incredible resources and talking points that all of you will have available. We're going to put them in a Google Workspace so you have access to them before you actually go out and talk to someone. Jennifer, you are on, my friend.
Oh, thank you so much.
About this. What are employers missing and missing out on?
Longer lives have outpaced the institutions and norms that were designed for them. And We experienced adults are having to navigate the gap between our actual lives and these inadequate systems. State and national policies and our political representatives are part of this landscape, and right now they are simply not meeting the challenges or the opportunities. The Encore network champions the civic, social, and economic contributions of people with experience. And I want to make a note because I see in the chat that quite a few of our participants today are from Canada. My statistics are focused right now on the United States, and I'm happy to expand these out in a future conversation so that we're looking at at a wider experience. But let's be clear, the candidates are missing out and on the power of older people because we are super contributors. So just let's look at 3 areas, and Janine mentioned them before: employers, communities, and the overall economy. For employers, age-diverse workplaces have greater productivity, innovation, workforce stability, and knowledge retention. And in this age of disruption, older workers have the skills to excel and stabilize these environments. Policy recommendation: make work more flexible so that experienced adults can sustain economic productivity in ways that match their changing lives and their capacities. Number 2, communities. We sustain organizations that build communities and represent 53% of all volunteering, again, throughout the United States. We strengthen families because we represent 59% of caregivers to both our younger generations and our older generations. And we really do enable the future up-and-coming generations because older Americans provide 72% of direct financial support for college students. That is an investment in our future collectively. And finally, we contribute $1.2 trillion in invisible labor that helps society function as effectively as it can. Policy recommendation: support family caregivers with paid leave, with respite care, and with meaningful tax relief. Families will remain healthier, more financially secure, and able to provide care without sacrificing workforce participation or their own well-being. And finally, third, for the overall economy, we create wealth. We generate 43% of the U.S. GDP, which totals a whopping $12.5 trillion annually. We are 2 to 3 more times more likely to build successful, high-growth businesses through entrepreneurial initiatives. Policy recommendation: encourage entrepreneurship after 50 through targeted finance, mentoring, and accelerator programs. And yes, Janine, I am looking at you. Adults can translate their experiences and accumulated expertise into innovation, business creation, jobs, and promoting local economic growth. So those are 3 opportunities, very specific policy recommendations that would enable older Americans to continue to thrive and to continue to be the super contributors that we are. And right now, I'm just going to pop in those three further information from the Encore Network's own resources and research. And this will also be in your resource packet that Janine is sharing later.
Jennifer, thank you so much. And I love that, one, you mentioned entrepreneurship because, you know, I'm all about building your own boat. So thank you for the shout out. But I love that you introduced policy because now we are going to have my friend and colleague and, should I say, partner in policy crime, Karen Brown, to talk specifically about, we have heard that ageism, workplace age discrimination, is a problem. We know what employers and communities are missing out on. Karen Brown is not only the CEO of iAging, but also has been a commissioner on the Colorado Commission on Aging. She was on Colorado's initial strategic action planning group on aging, is absolutely a guru of policy in this area. And I've asked her to talk about our philosophy, of course, is don't just talk about it, let's be about it. What are the specific policy solutions that we can be championing when we are talking to candidates or to elected officials? Karen, go friend.
Actually, Jennifer, that was great that you ended on policy because it really led right into this. So absolutely perfect. Yes, we want those candidates, our policymakers, to be taking action. There are two tiers to be looking at here. One is at the federal level. You'll be getting a little handout that Janine's going to put on the Google folder as well, but there'll be 3 pieces of federal legislation, 2 that I'm going to touch on today. There's a bill called Protecting Older Workers Against Discrimination Act. Anybody heard of PAWADA? If anybody's on Janine's email list, you have heard something about PAWADA. The problem it addresses, age discrimination in the U.S., is extremely hard. It's almost impossible to prove. This law actually will allow a worker to show that age was a motivating factor, not necessarily the only cause. So it allows for what's called mixed motive claims. So I might have been fired and I'm thinking, you know what, I'm a woman. This was a male-dominant organization. I'm part Native American. This is part of their culture, and I'm older. I don't fit any of those things. So under this law, I would have a lot more flexibility to file a case. It really just gives me a fair opportunity to show that age played a role. So ask your congressional delegation to be supporting PAWADA. The second federal bill that I would like you to really be asking for support on is Protecting Older Americans Act, and it was of 2025. You may or may not be familiar with this one. This is really actually the Special Senate Committee on Aging hosted a forum, an entire hour talking about older workers, and this was one of the topics that came up. Oftentimes when you're working for a large corporation, even small and medium anymore, you are asked on day one to sign a pre-dispute arbitration clause. That pre-dispute arbitration clause says that, you know what, I have a problem with you, 60 days, 2 years, 5 years. We were not going to go to court. We're going to do it through arbitration. When you do it through arbitration, it basically is private. All things are hidden. And in fact, it's really controlled by the company. Many times these kinds of cases might involve age discrimination and they never become public. So what this actually does is when you go to actually, if the law passes, it would allow for the company, the employee to say, I choose not to do the arbitration clause. I choose to go a public route. So you end up having a choice. There's one other bill that you'll learn about when you get the handout. But at the Colorado level, Janine and I certainly advocate asking for support of bills at the federal level. But we've got a step further here in Colorado. We have a group called the Older Worker Policy Collaborative. We focus specifically on what can we do at the state level. So we actually approach legislators directly and say, will you sponsor the bill? Will you carry the bill for us? Like, will you help us find other sponsors? So one of the bills that really only one of 5 in the U.S. right now is the Job Application Fairness Act. And the problem it addresses, there are companies that actually still have applications that say, Karen, when were you born? What's your high school graduation date? When did you graduate college? That's great in a world that age doesn't matter. But for a company or a hiring person who might be thinking, I really wanted somebody younger, they see that age and immediately you're stricken from the plant. You're put into another stack. What the bill does is it bans age-related questions on the job application. So really, it's not going to guarantee you an interview. What it does is it hopefully gets the employer, the HR person, to look at your skills and say, hey, you know, she actually has the skills we want, and you make it to the next step. The last bill is one, and I'll be quick on this one, older adult support and representation. We notice on the workforce boards and the education boards at the state level, everybody pushing for those younger people, got to get those high school kids their jobs. We actually were able to get a position on the Colorado Workforce Development Council and on the advisory board for higher ed, talking for a 55 plus person to actually specifically address how do we fund, provide programming, upskilling, reskilling, next skilling for older adults. So you could get support at the federal level, ask them to support those bills at the state level. You want help running a bill, figure out how to do it, contact Janine and I will help you. I just volunteered you, Janine.
No, and I'm going to bring you into any effort like this in our entire Older Worker Policy Collaborative. Karen, thank you so much. And Karen has put together some amazing handouts that do a deep dive into each of these pieces of legislation. And it's really important because I think when we're making an ask, we want to make a very specific kind of ask, not just general do something, but get this bill out of congressional committee where it's been sitting forever. Thank you so much. I'm going to segue now. I was having dinner with this woman on, Friday night. And all of a sudden I realized, you know what? We don't have anybody on our panel who actually is a candidate or has been an elected official. So let me introduce you to my sister-in-law, Carol Bush, who is on Tulsa City Council, a former Oklahoma State representative. And I asked her on the spot, and maybe because we had had a glass of wine, she said yes, to come and join us today and talk about how you actually get a candidate's attention. And I think Carol is an important person to speak to this, not only because her own candidate experience, but she also has experience on the other side as a government affairs director in getting other candidates to pay attention to issues that she cares about. Carol, the floor is yours.
First of all, thank you so much. And I'm so enjoying listening to everybody. We could talk about this for days, but I know I've only got 4 minutes, so I'm going to dive right in. I'm in Oklahoma, and in Oklahoma, the quote unquote silver tsunami, and I'm coming back to that in a minute, population age 65 and older by the year 2034. By then, older adults are expected to outnumber children in the state for the first time in history, in Oklahoma, by the way. So I actually had a constituent that recently remembered me as a state rep, because city council really don't have much to do with policy anymore unless you want your trash picked up. But she reached out to me, and the perspective was really interesting. She says, "We are standing on an amazing moment in human history. For the very first time, there are more people on Earth over the age of 65 than there are toddlers under 5. Yet news headlines worry about a scary silver tsunami. They are treating a great human victory like a natural disaster. Calling long life a crisis is a huge mistake. In reality, we have built a world where growing old in good health is our greatest achievement. We have unlocked a brand new third chapter of life. This isn't a time of fading out. It's a time for new purpose, creativity, and goals." When she emailed me that, I thought, this is super resonating to me. So how, as a candidate, especially at the state level, can we get better engaged? First of all, change how we're calling this. Silver tsunami sounds horrible, right? I have gray hair and I'm 65. So why are we assuming the name being this catastrophic thing of all these old people that are just going to wither away, and it's going to cost us so much money to take care of them? That's not true. So I think we need to change the narrative on how we approach candidates and quit calling it those things. You all are providing great resources on how to be educated. As somebody who has served in office, I always appreciate those that have educated themselves on a topic. Very brief, with the statistics. Yes, stories are always good, but then people that approach me with solution. As a representative, we start the year with 3,000 bills on a variety of topics. So to stand out in that mess at the beginning of session, people that have actionable items, part of the solution, they're not just yelling at me about this crisis, but they're actually got a solution, is what resonated with me. Going, wait a minute, I'm paying attention to you because you're helping me be a better, effective representative. Also understanding how government works. Is it a federal issue? Is it a state issue? Is it a city issue? And in this case, is it a government issue versus a corporate issue? And because we often try to be careful, if you want free enterprise, government doesn't necessarily like telling corporations what they should and should not do. So there's a fine line there of creating good policy that hopefully we can network better with our corporate people. And then building a relationship with representatives. Let me tell you something. meant the world to me when people took time to call me. I'd meet them for coffee, listen to their story, listen to why it's important to them, and to have their expertise so that I could go back to the Capitol, make good policy, and build those relationships. Because when you get in the heat of things, especially as a representative or a senator, you sometimes might need to call back to that person and go, wait a minute, did I get this right? I want to make sure I'm hearing what you said so that I can continue to advocate. And being able to have that personal relationship is very important, I think, to candidates. Also, in this day and age, you've heard them say, let's have the sausage in May. We may be starting on a bill that may be 5 years from now before we get anywhere. But there are always small victories that you build on, right? And so at the end of a session, if we've been working on something in this arena, and maybe you didn't get all of the elephant baked, but you got a hoof, celebrate that victory.
Yep.
Thank that representative, that senator, that candidate, that person for taking your issue to heart and getting it through the first phase, because that will encourage them to build on it again and again until finally we get the big elephant baked.
Carol, thank you so much. And I really appreciate that last part as well. I know that's something that we've really tried to do in the Colorado Older Worker Policy Collaborative, is to really cheer on those representatives that have helped us even when we didn't get everything we wanted. So thank you so much. And I so appreciate your doing this at last minute, especially having just come off a river trip. So thank you so much. I'm going to turn now. We know that another way to get attention for our issue is getting media attention for it. And we also know that our particular issue isn't necessarily popular with the media. And so I want to introduce my friend and colleague, Barbara Brooks, who is freaking unprecedented. Let me say that again, freaking unprecedented in being able to get coverage of ageism, age discrimination, aging issues on media. She is an age inclusion speaker. She is the founder and CEO of SecondActWomen, but she's here today with her hat of the woman who can always convince a television station to cover her story. So Barbara, go ahead and share your best tips. And Barbara put together an amazing handout. Again, that will be in our resource folder that we will be sharing on Monday. Barbara, go for it, my friend.
Thank you. Great intro. And I'm so glad. First of all, you need a round of applause for putting all of us together, including getting everybody here on this call. Am I right, everyone? Yeah, my job is to amplify the voices of you. In particular, women over 40, 50, 60 plus. I turned 60 myself this October. Yay. And pardon me, you're going to hear a little squeaking with my dog. And so my job is to help you also gain the media attention. It doesn't take a media contributor or a public relations expert like myself to get that attention. So don't be afraid of getting and trying for the visibility that you deserve and that we all deserve to push forward all of these efforts. So I'm going to talk about why get media, the media types, tips to get the media attention and make the pitch itself. I've got some templates and some examples as well. So all of it, I'm obviously not going to go through every single point. It's all in a document, as you said. But why get the media? Because it's free. It's free. Social media, because I'm including, I'm always going to do non-traditional and traditional media. Not traditional being the Substacks of the world, the LinkedIns and all the other things. But it's free. A politician trusts, well, some politicians trust the news story of the podcaster, the journalist, and all the things. But there's a paper trail. It reaches the exact audience that needs to hear the story that can help move the lawmaker forward. It creates a paper trail, as I just said, a digital trail, a paper trail, a voice trail, all the things. It builds the case over time. Hence the reason my butt is always trying to get on media to tell your stories so that we can build the case over time for things that we're talking about, like we're talking about today. And lastly, it's the cheapest reach you'll ever get. It goes with number one, that it's free. So let's talk about the media types themselves. A lot of people get confused. You don't need to be an expert in this. I'm just simply here to give you who are some of the people that you'll want to reach out to. So there's obviously the journalist or reporter. Some go by either or. There's the editor, there's the TV producer, there's the podcast producer. Obviously, there's the podcast host. Radio is still at play, although I believe there were some that were let go in the Colorado market and nationally because that's me, myself, and I used to work for that company. And so there's influencers and content creators are extremely important. Don't count them out. And there's obviously newsletter writers, including our LinkedIn newsletters, so all the cases. So there's a variety of different media types of people. So let's talk about the 6 tips. And you might want to give me a countdown, Janine, because you know I love to talk.
And aside, everybody here who I've invited loves to talk and has so much to say. And I was so challenged when I sent everybody you have 4 minutes. So countdown, my friend. I'm going to hold you.
All right.
Okay.
Number 6 tips to get the media, localize it or skip it altogether. They will not be interested at all. No reporter covers age discrimination is bad. No, they cover here's what's happening to the real person, the state, or whatever may be happening. The stories get covered. Okay. Number 2 is target the right beat, the right person, the right journalist, the right podcaster. Give the general tip altogether. Don't even go directly to the producers. It's traditionally, if it's a newsroom, it's traditionally the journalist, the person who's on air, who's interested in the story, who's looking for the story. And they then pitch the producer, and the producer then says, get me the information, me as in you getting them the information, what's your book? Again, I have the templates here for you to use that. Okay, so number 3 is attach it to a moment in time. There's a moment in time. Everyone above me, before me, has given you plenty of stories to pitch in your market. There's legislative sessions, bill introductions. There's Older Americans Month. I'm not a fan of the word older, but Older Americans Month. In May, there's Intergenerational Month coming up in September. There are plenty of news stories that you can use to bundle with your pitch. The reporters run on hooks, not evergreen issues at this point. And so here's a few, but I'm just going to highlight. The rest are in here, and I've also been told the age bias costs the economy $850 billion, as someone mentioned already. The Colorado JAFA Act, that was thanks to Janine and Karen, all the others that got that into effect in July 1st of 24. 64% of workers over 50 have seen experience. Basically, you have to attach it to a story. And most importantly, that story has to be attached to a human or human, whether that's you, a family member, a coworker, where there's proof in the story. Okay. And then the rule of thumb is no hook, no story. A great stats, if you're giving one, needs a why. Why? Why today? Why? Okay. So number 4 is give the reporter a quotable ask. Give them a quote, whether it's you, a lawmaker, whoever it may be. Make sure that they are getting a quotable quote of some sort. Number 5 of 6, bring one real human connection, not just the stats, but always the stats, in my opinion, unless it's a really great human interest piece that goes beyond the stat itself. But as I said, the human piece, which is how I'm getting that attraction, which is why others on this same call have gotten, like Ashton Applewhite, who's actually been on CBS Sunday Morning. And number 6, follow up once professionally, let it breathe, and then go back and follow up a week later. Sometimes it just got stuck in their trail. And here's number 7, the bonus, email it directly to them. Don't attach anything unless you need to, unless it's connected to a link. You need to have that link back in that email. Bullet points are best. I have the templates for you, and there you have all of what you need to know. And again,
Barbara,
it's okay. You can do that.
Barbara, thank you. And when you see the templates, literally you can copy and paste and put your own information in. I so appreciate you doing that. So also someone who's going to talk to us a little bit about gaining attention of media and through art is my friend Meg LaPorte of Art Against Ageism. But Meg, I am trying to find you so I can spotlight you. And there you are. Okay, let me go ahead and add spotlight. Meg, before she co-founded Art Against Ageism, also marketer, journalist, long history in the aging space. And that girl knows how to get attention. She did this lovely campaign a few years ago of basically on social media rewriting ageist headlines. And it was so fun. Meg, what do you got for us? Give us your best tips.
Thank you, Janine. I don't think I can do any better than Barbara on the media side. I think I would probably just add a couple of things. She did an excellent job of covering so many things about getting published in the media. And I would just add that that she was very spot on about the angle, about having an angle and an anchor. And I think that the other thing is to know your outlet. If you're writing, to know them. Read something that they've already written, read several things, or read something that the journalist, the reporter has written, and then just so that you can understand what their voices, what their interests are when you pitch something. I think that's really important. As somebody who has fielded and edited and actually pitched many articles, I think that is one of the most important things. And also, by the way, to look on their website to see what their guidelines are. Many have guidelines about submitting opinion pieces. Most of them do. And they will tell you there's a word limit as well, by the way. If you're going to send something right out before a pitch or with a pitch, then understand what those guidelines are. That's really important, because sometimes they may just eliminate you if you're not following their guidelines. And so I would be remiss if I did not bring up Art Against Ageism and artistic activism. It is central to what Art Against Ageism does. We use art and creativity to tackle ageism and advance positive and correct age beliefs. So one example I would say, and one of my favorite examples of artistic activism throughout history, because many movements have utilized art and creativity in very effective ways throughout history. One is the HIV/AIDS movement, and the NAMES Project, or the AIDS quilt is most commonly known. In the 1980s, the AIDS epidemic was so widespread, and yet the administration, Ronald Reagan's administration, ignored it in large part. It was a very low priority. And then came along the AIDS quilt, and it was displayed on the National Mall and had an incredible impact because it was really artistic storytelling. Again, back to the storytelling, as Barbara, as we're all been talking about, the storytelling and the beautiful art of people. And I'm not sure, for those of you who don't know what the AIDS quilt was, they are very large quilts made by caregivers and family members of people who had died of HIV or AIDS. And some of them are, if you've ever seen it, it's really incredibly beautiful. Now you can see all of the quilts online. As a matter of fact, I think you just have to Google the NAMES Project. So after that display on the National Mall, I think it was in 1987, not long after that, it did catch the attention of the administration, and many people credit the AIDS quilt as being very effective in funding the Ryan White CARE Act, which was the largest federal funding to do research on HIV and AIDS. And I bring this up, I'm not suggesting you replicate the AIDS quilt, but it's really incredible inspiration. Other people, there have been many others examples throughout history. Art Against Ageism itself, if you go to artagainstageism.org, we have ourselves, like the one that you mentioned, Janine, done some interactive art installations to bring attention of the topic of ageism and age beliefs. And so I think you could find inspiration there. There are many different, on social media, there are incredible accounts on social media that are doing really incredible things to bring attention to their issues to politicians. There is one in particular, an account I would say called Led by Donkeys, is weird name, but they do really incredible stuff. They do projection exhibits and stories. I think they're based in the UK actually, but if you follow them, you can see the work that they've done. But I would not discount the power of film, documentaries, poetry, photography in drawing attention to a candidate, to an issue through social media and in person.
Meg, thank you. Beautifully said. when you told me everything you wanted to talk about, I was like, you can't do that in 4 minutes, and you did. Thank you so much. And I think for everybody who wants to know more about everybody who's been speaking and their work and how to find them, part of the resources that will be sent out is basically a list of everyone who's spoken today, along with, if they're willing, their content information, links to their website, podcasts, LinkedIn, and all of that. So Meg, thank you so much. Okay, so now we're going to segue to someone who I am just thrilled is joining us, and I've got to find Ale. Where are you? Okay. Oh, okay. I am adding spotlight. There he is. Okay. I was so excited. So Ale is currently, for those of you who haven't met him yet, the executive director of Old School Hub for Ageism, awareness, and all of that. And that was intriguing enough, but what was especially interesting to me was his background. It's been community organizing, it's been championing, it's been doing the kind of things that we are talking about, getting policymaking attention on a variety of issues. So I am just going to hand the floor to you and tell us what, in your view, the best way, if our goal is to get candidates and elected officials' attention, what should people be doing? How do they do it?
First of all, thank you so much, Janine, for the invitation. I'm around great company and it's great to see everybody here. And I just want to start off by reminding everybody that let's establish one truth. Right out the gate, older adults are the most reliable voters in midterm elections and elections in general. We turn out, we fill out the ballots, and we decide who holds that power. Yet, despite that voting power, workplace age discrimination remains treated like an invisible problem. And that silence should end today, not just with me, not just with Janine, not just with all of us here, but all of us need to make that a rallying cry. So Janine mentioned my background in organizing, and I really believe that organizing is at the key of developing that power. And part of organizing is narrative shift, it's media organizing, it's people-powered journalism. Real organizing isn't just dropping off a flyer before an election, it's about building power by shifting the narrative. For decades, the cultural narrative around ageism has been privatized, treated as an individual misfortune or a personal health milestone rather than a systemic and economic civil right violation. We break that by controlling the story. Media organizing, I heard Carol, Barbara, and Meg talk about sharing stories, and I want to tell people the importance of that, because sharing a story isn't just me telling you the story. It's changing someone's viewpoint. It's changing someone's mind. And when you do that, you shift policy. You are able to create policy change by people humanizing the issue. You are no longer just an older person losing their job. You are no longer a statistic. You are humanizing who you are. I see you. And people-powered journalism. I heard Barbara talk about the different layers and not just the traditional media. But I want to give a shout out to one of our co-founders, Ashton, who is on this, who has a Substack. People-powered journalism. We can no longer trust traditional media. We have to be the ones telling our stories. Because the moment you let someone tell your story, they're going to get it wrong. And we need to be the ones carrying our own narrative. And then I want to bring in the elephant in the room as I'm seeing everybody on the Zoom is it has to be an intersectional and multi-generational power. Ageism does not exist in a vacuum, and Ashton says that to me all the time. It intersects directly with racism, sexism, ableism, and economic status. Older women face a compound wage penalty. Workers of color experience compound employment discrimination over a lifetime. And then you have younger workers struggling with entry-level jobs and their exploitation, and older workers being blocked from re-entering the workforce. And we share the same fight. An extractive economic system that devalues human labor. When we organize across generations and identities, we're no longer a demographic, we are an unshakable majority in power. You mentioned part of that leads me into town halls. I want to offer one core rule also around organizing is never apologize. Many of us go into these meetings and we say, I'm sorry to bother you, or we go into legislative visits and I apologize no, you pay their salaries. I pay their salaries. We are the ones that should control this narrative that they're doing us a favor. But within that rule, we have, as I think Barbara mentioned, we have to give them that quote. Within that quote, I want to give you the 60-second spiel. Your first 15 seconds establish who you are and your expertise. I spent 25 years doing this, and automated hiring did this to me, and that was the end date. Then you share systemic data. Over 60% of workers over 45 face workplace bias, draining our economy. And then you make the unapologetic ask. Again, always be unapologetic because they work for us. When elected, will you commit to sponsoring legislation that bans ageist hiring algorithms or closes federal protection loophole? Yes or no? Always want to end with that ask that's powerful, that's direct, because you want to get them to commit. And lastly,
Wait a minute. I want to interrupt you because that last 60 seconds you just did, I want you to repeat it. So everybody, this is like the heart of what we are asking everyone to do. Would you mind repeating it?
no, by all means.
It was so good.
You have 60 seconds, sometimes 2 minutes in a lot of these town halls, these city council meetings. So you want to establish and use those 60 seconds strategically. In the first 15 seconds, establish who you are. Let them know who you are. I am Alessandro Negrete. I am a constituent of this city, and this is what my experience is where I live. The next 15 seconds, use them to talk about your question. I have been laid off, but these are the statistics on why I shouldn't. And your last 30 should be around laying out your ask and make it hard and make it direct and make them commit to it. And don't let them pivot, because I'm going to go into the next part, which is the pivoting. Because a lot of them do great jobs. They're very charismatic. They're like, oh, thank you for your concern. But they never want to answer your question. So when you get to the pivoting, they're going to give you this beautiful, oh, we love our elder community. We love our seniors. You built this city. But this is where you're like, that sympathy doesn't pay rent. That sympathy doesn't allow you to keep your job. That sympathy isn't doing what it needs to do. So when they pivot around these issues and they say, my focus is on generating economies, then question, creating jobs means what? How are you going to systemically and operationalize that? How are you going to create that policy? What does it look like? When they do pass it, I want to remind everybody that elections aren't about showing up to the ballot. It's a long-term investment in yourself. When you hold these people accountable, these politicians accountable, you're making them work for you. And so lastly, I just wanted to say, holding candidates' feet to the fire isn't hostility, it's basic civic accountability. We as a community, we as a movement have the numbers. We have the personal stories. We have the people-powered journalism and infrastructure to amplify candidate responses to thousands of local voters every day. And I know that's something that ever since I've been leading Old School and working with Ashton, Ryan, and David, we've put out a couple of narrative shift campaigns where people will visualize this. We're doing a lot of this consciousness building to build multi-generational power in our office hours. So when we organize narrative power and stand unapologetically at town halls, at council meetings, and we refuse to accept deflection, we don't just ask for change, we command it. And we put age bias on the ballot. And we win.
I feel like I just went to church.
That was so fabulous. Thank you so much. And Ashton, you have got a tough act to follow. And I say this as to the woman who is the OG of the movement to end ageism. Ashton, wrap it up for us.
Hey, that was great. We're so fired up. I hope to keep you that way. We are all working to end ageism in the workplace and everywhere else. And like all prejudice, ageism works to divide us, to keep us from joining forces and demand the kind of change that this workshop has equipped us to fight for. And we see this in politics with the resurgent, horrible discourse around gerontocracy. The myth that older Americans are hoarding wealth and housing and opportunity at the expense of the young. And by the way, Janine and I have written articles debunking that. It will be in the resource packet you'll get tomorrow. One notion we rebut is the idea that older people should get out of the job market to make way for younger workers. That is called the fallacy of the lump of labor. You can look it up, and economists have debunked it countless times. In fact, higher employment among older workers correlates with higher levels of employment for younger ones. So in the current cooling but not collapsing labor market, two age groups stand out as especially vulnerable for different reasons. Young adults, new graduates, highly sensitive to changes in the job market, have trouble getting hired even when it's strong. And as entry-level applicants or employees, they bear the brunt of hiring freezes and efficiency pushes driven by AI. The second group, as you all know, is workers over age 55. We are not usually the first to be laid off, but we face much longer stretches of unemployment if we are laid off. This particular issue
Getting age bias on the ballot for the midterms offers a really powerful unifying lens. And God knows we need some unifying ways to approach what's happening in this country now. Age bias harms workers of all ages. It affects both local and global economy. It cuts across urban-rural, red-blue, and union-non-union divides. And it has historically been supported by both Republicans and Democrats. So that gives this issue, there's always a way in, and you've just learned so many ways in. The potential to unite voters across age, ideology, and geography. Wealth is not concentrated among old people or young people. It's concentrated among rich people who perpetuate and advance the interests of the ultra-wealthy. This is a class problem, not an age problem. It is the 1% against the rest of us. This growing inequality has become increasingly hard for Americans, no matter where they fall on the political spectrum, to ignore. So let's build on that awareness, take what we just learned out into the world, and get age bias on the ballot. Thank you.
Woohoo, Ashton, thank you so much. Okay, so everyone, here's what happens next. And really what happens next is really up to all of you and other people who've asked, who've signed up, who wanted the recording sent to them. The intention of this was to get people to recognize that we have a moment right now where, because midterm elections are less than 100 days away, we have a moment right now where we can really call attention to an issue that means so much to so many of us that we've been working on in different ways, and actually get candidates to make commitments about it. So here's what happens next. Tomorrow I'm going to be editing this recording. There will be a transcript. Some of the resources that you'll be getting, and all of this will go out to everybody on Monday. The resources you'll be getting are things like all the legislation that Karen Brown talked about, Barbara Brooks' tips for how to get media attention, as well as her sample templates. We've got information about what you can and can't do if your organization is a nonprofit. Very often people think, oh, we can't get involved, but it's perfectly okay to educate. We'll have stuff on that. A number of people have talked about narrative change, and we will have guidelines to age-inclusive communications, ways to talk about this stuff. From the Encore network, we're going to have all of those statistics and information, those talking points that Jennifer Butz talked about. Ashton said she's going to be sending us some information. I know we're going to be getting some information from other speakers as well. All of that goes out to you. What happens next really depends on all of you. What I'm going to be sending out, along with all of the information that I just mentioned, is basically another little form saying, do you want to get involved? Do you want your organization to get involved in some way? Here's the piece that I'm willing to do. I have access to the Action Network. That's the platform that I use. And the Action Network is great for mobilizing people and also for doing things like petition. For any organization that wants to be involved in their own community, I'm willing to create petitions that are under your own branding and that kind of thing that you can get out. I'm willing to work with you on kind of talking points. If there's a particular race, I've also created a prompt that will allow any of you to just go ahead and put, I live in this state, I live in this zip code, who is running for various offices, and are there any known debates or town halls or forums, so that you'll have a sense of where you might be able to make an impact. But all of this works. This was lovely. We heard from a lot of amazing people, and they've all given great advice, but this works if we're willing to take the next step. So what I would love for everybody to do right now, we've only got 3 minutes left. Again, if there are questions in the chat, we'll go ahead. I'll make sure they get answered and sent to you. But I would love to know, just put in the chat, are you interested in doing something moving forward? What kind of things would you like to do in your community? So let's just take a minute, go ahead and pop things in the chat, and we'll read some of them out. Okay, I'm seeing national media, count me in, same. People are tweeting about it. How else would you like to get involved? Oh, Meg, I'd love one of your public art installations about this particular topic. Anybody else? Just thoughts. It can be anything. Encore Network will publish the recording and make info available to all of our members. Great. And we'll be sending out don't worry about saving the chat. I'll be sending out the chat to everyone. Freedom of Information Act request, doing help. I'd love it. Maureen and Barbara, both of whom have extensive communities, are willing to get this information out to their communities, talking to representatives. These are all fabulous. Just keep popping them in the chat.
Would there be, and knowing you already have this in your head, is there, and maybe I missed it, is there one big next step, or is it you collecting this in the chat to figure out the top 3 next steps?
The big next steps is me sending something out on Monday, and along with a request, how do you want to be involved? And depending on how people say they want to be involved, we may do a follow-up session. We'll just get specific resources out to specific people. And the other request will be for volunteers. I think, I went from running a multi-person consulting company to Changing the Narratives that had a very small team to doing this now, which I love, but on my own. Anybody who wants to volunteer to help, I will be making an ask for that as well. But I love that people are wanting to write letters. People are wanting to do things. That's really what we want to have to do. I just want to thank all of you so much, because we heard Ali say it, and we all know, any of us who've ever done any kind of organizing, we know that people power is actually what makes the difference. So I want to thank all of you. You are the people power. I want to thank you for raising your hand, for spending this hour with us. And again, what I am hoping is that this is the beginning, not just a one-off workshop. We've got less than 100 days, people. Let's go for it. Thank you all so much. And thank you. Can we get everybody unmute yourselves? I want a really loud round of applause for everyone who agreed to speak. All the people that I asked to speak are incredibly busy people. We're good.